Okay, well, here we are. So, good afternoon, good evening, probably good evening for most of you. Um, just wanted to have this informal chat. My name is Dr. Patrick Lockwood, and I wanted to just ramble for a minute about politics and addiction and fear, all of which I discuss at length in my book, The Fear Problem. Get it on Amazon, mascotbooks.com. It's a good read. It's cheap, simple, it's easy to read. So here's where I'm at. I see all these tweets about political shenanigans, I guess you want to call them that. And I find myself going, why does this matter? So I'll give you a real clear for instance, and I'm going to pull up one of the top trending tweets right now. U.S. News. Hillary Clinton suggests Russia is grooming Tulsi Gabbard to run as a third-party candidate. That headline in and of itself, I want you to think about that headline. What about that makes sense, number one? Number two, what about that is designed to make you freak out and respond right away? Think about that. Think about that. This is a problem. The headline, again, I'm going to read it real slowly from U.S. News. Hillary Clinton suggests Russia is grooming Tulsi Gabbard to run as a third-party candidate. So let's take a second and just break down all the ways in which this headline from U.S. News on Twitter, check it out, literally says anything and everything to cause insane fear. Everything from the names mentioned to the, let's say, innuendo in the title. Hillary Clinton in and of herself is just an incendiary figure. She's a political hack who is trying to save the country or whatever, if you're a Democrat, and if you're a Republican or conservative, she's the devil of some sort. So automatically, if you think good of her or ill of her, that just her name is going to get you to go, wow. And then the entire phrase that should grab your attention is Hillary Clinton suggests Russia. That phrase in and of itself is loaded. It's like a $1 million phrase. Gets all sorts of clicks, likes, and tweets just because the word Russia is there. Because Russia's scary and bad. And admittedly, I think they do terrible things. They're huge human rights violators. They're just, generally speaking, the crooks in charge in Russia, it seems, are bad people. It seems. That's what it seems like. So the fact that she's associating Tulsi Gabbard with Russia, just like everyone associated Donald Trump with Russia, now we have a serious, let's say, innuendo. So automatically, intense fear. Oh my God, really? And she said Hillary Clinton suggests Russia is grooming, which implies an active, intentional, manipulative process. It's grooming Tulsi Gabbard to run as a third-party candidate. Now, third-party candidate might not seem very incendiary to your first, let's say, listen or read, but we're kind of tribalistic creatures. So if you're more liberal in nature, you typically associate with the Democrats. If you are more conservative in nature, you typically associate more with Republicans or libertarians or whatever. So basically speaking, there's no part of this headline other than the word is, or the article, that is designed to make you understand the facts clearly, to get the nuances of things clearly, to and do anything except basically get your attention to make you go, oh shit, I should look at this and click on this. That's insane. It's literally insane. And the joke is the headline right beneath it is probably more true and more accurate, more thoughtful, more interesting than whatever the US news article says. So the headline right beneath it says, "Forget pizza rat. This cockroach with a cigarette is the new invader of the streets." So basically I guess there was a meme called Pizza Rat, and now there's video footage of a cockroach with a cigarette in New York. And that meme of a cockroach with a cigarette is probably 1,000 times more interesting and more accurate than whatever is being talked about in this U.S. news article. And I'm not for Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not against her. I'm in the IDGAF party. I don't care. It's impossible to know what's really going on, so why would you care? But that's just my personal preference. So all these things, these headlines, just absolutely ridiculous. And let's take a look at the trends for me. So the trends for me are I was born without, Westbrook basketball, Frank Ocean, and Chapman. So sports, and I was born without. So all these things, I don't know how any of this is even basically relevant to real life and what matters. I can't imagine here, if we just go over to the news section on Twitter. If we go over to the news section on Twitter, let's look at the other incendiary headlines in the news section. There's a law that's apparently capping freelance writer submissions in California. There's another one from US News that says there's a video of a high school football coach disarming a student and preventing a tragedy. So let's talk about that, since I don't have much to say about the freelance writer thing. So apparently this coach saved some kid from, I think, committing suicide, if I'm correct. And I know the word committing has this moralistic connotation to it, and I don't mean it in that sense. It's just the way my mind thinks about it, because it's the language I was, let's say, acculturated in. It's a pseudo event. It's important that someone didn't die, but it's not really newsworthy. But we're making it newsworthy because there's a video and there's nothing else to talk about. AOC from politics. AOC endorsed Bernie Sanders for president at a rally. I don't know why that matters, but it's a thing. There's National Period Day, which I tweeted about. Don't know why it's a thing. Anti-government protests in Lebanon. Don't know how we can affect that here in the United States. Sam Waterston, the actor, was arrested at a climate protest at the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, basically, Republican president or candidate from the past, John Kasich, supports impeachment of President Trump. Maybe that's true. It's just a headline. Yeah. Apparently, lots of bullshit. All sorts of bullshit today. How does any of this matter? How is any of this trending? Anyone know? Because I have a theory, which I talked about in my book, which is behind my shoulder here. It's real simple. We've gotten to a point where we're so stuck in this, what my friend Bobby calls the on-demand culture, where we have to have things all the time, all day, every day, that we basically need information all day, every day, or we feel as if something bad's happening. There's like a fear, like a FOMO, a fear of missing out, but it's about not of missing out on something good. It's a fear of missing out on something that's good for your survival. There's an evolutionary threat that we feel if we don't have enough information, because as we all know, knowledge is one of the best ways to ameliorate anxiety about future circumstances. Because everyone and their brother is afraid of Donald Trump getting elected, or Beto getting elected, or whomever the Democrat is. If we don't have a constant news cycle, something bad's going to happen. And it seems to me, not that it's a perfect corollary, but it seems to me as if we have this compulsive behavior of checking the latest political bullshit. Now, it's not perfectly compulsive. It's not compulsive in the same way that addiction is, but it's got this addictive flavor. It's got this compulsive, good for my survival flavor. And the interesting thing is, if you actually look at addiction from the neuroscience and the evolutionary psych perspective, you could say that the instinctual process that's hijacked by drugs of abuse when it gets to that point where you develop tolerance and there's an imbalance in that self-control, go out and seek it part of the brain, the striatum. Um, you could look at it as the person who we would call addicted, not drug dependence, but addiction syndrome. You could say that the person now has a compulsive need to go do something that their brain, not they themselves, but their brain thinks as necessary for survival. Similar to how we think of um, looking at the news, talking about the bullshit that is whatever latest thing that Donald Trump tweeted, or the latest thing that AOC said, or the latest thing that Elizabeth Warren said, or Hillary Clinton did. I hear rumors that Hillary Clinton is going to probably jump back in the race or something stupid like that. I don't know why, other than attention. It's just this really stupid phenomenon we find ourselves in, where we have this, what I would describe as fear-driven instinct to go do, to get involved, to see, to know. Because if we know every last little detail, then we're going to make a better informed decision about which douche or turd that we should vote into office. And I'm going to take the South Park line on this. It's not very sophisticated, it's not very academic, but the truth of the matter is, you're pretty much always going to get a douche or a turd. South Park's right about that. Only sick people will run for office. Sane, reasonable people work in businesses. Sane, reasonable people, or relatively sane, relatively reasonable people compared to the average, don't run for politics. They don't do anything in the political world. When are we going to learn that? And I'm not a very historically well-read person, so I'm sure there's a famous author, a Burke or something like that, who's already made some kind of brilliant quip about how, of course, only sick people run for political office, but we got to realize that. We're only going to find kind of narcissistic kinds of people who are interested in kind of capitalizing on this fear instinct that says, hey, we're in trouble. And I think that's the thing I want to extol here, impart upon you guys, and have a dialogue with you about if you're interested in sharing. Oh boy, got weirdly kind of right there. Perfect. So, think about it this way. When you see a tweet or an article on Facebook, or you hear a news headline when you're at the gym or wherever you might be in public, at the airport, whatever, think about it. Is your first instinct, oh, good, I'm happy, I'm so delighted, I'm so thrilled, I'm so grateful? It's any of those positive affective states that most of us go after, those emotional states. Is that really your first instinct, or is it more like, what now? What's coming up? What's happening? What do we do? What happened now? It's probably more like that, I imagine. Can you imagine being in a state like that 24 hours a day? Can you imagine being the moron news anchors who think that that's an appropriate way to function? The Rachel Maddows of the world, the Sean Hannitys of the world, constantly in this predatory aggression, threat management state of being. I cannot imagine that defensive and aggressive and offensive way, what I call the proactive approach in my book. I can't imagine being in that threat management state of mind at that level all day long. Why would you want to be? And maybe it's because we live in a world where we don't have to be anymore. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I don't know. It's kind of confusing to me. For the life of me, I can't come up with a more coherent theory or parsimonious theory than, because we're so primitive, we create structures that appeal to our primitive nature. And I think the 24-hour news cycle appeals to our primitive status oriented nature, and it appeals to our primitive threat management nature. I can't imagine anything. I mean, I'm open to other ideas, but that's where I'm at. And isn't it a wonder that we have an opioid crisis? Isn't it a wonder that we have so much rampant alcohol use? Isn't it a wonder that people are really, really interested? People have like this love relationship with cannabis in this country and other countries. Think about it. Life seems, generally speaking, if you listen to like the Steven Pinkers of the world and whatnot, life is basically very, very good in many Western countries. Things are improving in every way, shape, and form, and in other parts of the world, obviously. But if we come from this environment where threat, famine, confusion, uncertainty is the norm, comparatively speaking, then I guess we would have to find a way to recreate that because that's what we're accustomed to. Maybe that's one explanation for why we're here. But I seriously think that somewhere around the 60s and 70s, we took a left turn at Albuquerque and we thought to ourselves, well, if we just make more money, if we just speed up the news cycle close to 24 hours, if we just really protest everything, if we kind of really wear our tribe on our sleeve, everything will get better. I think something shifted. I don't know what it is, but it seems to have left us in this place where now our threat management instincts and our prestige-oriented instincts, our sensory apparatus, I guess you could call it, are really, really like overactivated all day long. And I don't know how it wouldn't be activated. Like seeing that little thing light up at the bottom of your social media, or the red thing light up on Facebook, or the blue thing on Twitter, or whatever, right? Seeing the notification bell show off or whatever. I can't imagine that not being immediately reinforcing. You know? Much like substances of abuse can be immediately reinforcing. Now, there's no good literature that says there's no quality randomized controlled clinical trials, da 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 da, neuroscience research that shows that social media technology is addictive. That's so far BS at this point. There's a lot of research, not to denigrate any of the people who've done research on it, but it's not a real thing where there's an actual addiction. But at the level of the brain, but being kind of negating what I just said, however, you could see how similar processes are engaged, because you can do anything, almost anything, compulsively without it being addictive. And I think we're at this compulsive state, this fear management compulsive state, is how I'd like to describe it. That's why I think substance abuse is on the rise, even though addiction is probably stable, especially if you look at the SAMHSA data. And that's why I think obsessive use of social media is on the rise. And I think that's why greed-driven behavior is probably on the rise, all of which I talked about in my book. So what do we do with all this? Like, for instance, to go back to Twitter. So how do you, here's another one, another political tweet. Just to keep the example going. Presidential candidate Andrew Yang is answering questions for 10 hours straight on Friday. Let's see what this is about. He's going to do a live Q&A starting at 10 Eastern Time. And he's received 15,000 questions so far. Now, if you're listening to this and you're for or against him, I imagine you had an automatic reaction of, oh, great, or Hmm. Why? Something of that nature. And if you didn't notice your reaction, I would encourage you to think about that. Because essentially, we're supposed to have some kind of reaction. Or at least that's what, our tech overlords would want us to do, is to have some kind of very strong reaction. And that's the problem. In the old days, we would see a tweet like Andrew Yang's going to have a 10-hour Q&A. Like if this were a newspaper article in the 70s in the United States, there would be a little hemming and hawing around it. But I bet you there are going to be, I don't know how many different reactions of a positive and negative nature that are fairly incendiary about the fact that he's going to have a Q&A. And it's going to be insane. Like, let me look through some of the responses and see if I can prove my point off the top of my head. So there's a couple of tweets that are fully in favor of everything that he's doing. I'm apologizing for the long space between talking. I'm looking at the tweets about Andrew Yang and his lengthy Q&A that he did. And what did he say? He said, "We're doing things in the most dumbass, inefficient way possible. And the only reason for it would be if your goals were to not actually do right by your people and to only enrich a select group of Americans." And he was talking about tax cuts and bank bailouts. That's an incendiary tweet. Got 1,811 likes. And there's a bunch of people who basically really love him, talking about him discussing his autistic son and all that stuff. And there's someone who's talking about his favorite celebrities and all sorts of very positive tweets. So it's only positive, which is interesting. I'm honestly surprised. I was expecting much more like trash talking. Happy to be wrong. But the point of the matter remains that shouldn't be news. It is, but it shouldn't be. And we're addicted to it as if it's like a thing that we must see and know. When there are so many much more important things going on. The election is not even a year away. And we are already acting as if it's tomorrow. It's the weirdest thing. So here's my thing. Why do we put so much stock into this? You tell me. Why does this matter? In this field of clowns, and I don't mean like clown world clowns, I just mean these people are clowns. They get dressed up, they put makeup on, they move around and dance, and they make funny faces, and they make asses of themselves so that we laugh, right? Politicians literally are clowns. What the hell's going on? Why is this happening this way? I don't know. It's so weird to me. I just don't understand it. It's the weirdest thing. Let's look at the other trending things just to see how ridiculous we are and how addicted we are. Other top trending things going on here. The search feature. Top trending. Still sports. And sports. Makes sense. Sports, big day in sports for baseball and basketball. And a lot of people are tweeting about the High school football coach disarming the student and preventing the suicide from happening. Again, heartwarming, but definitely, definitely not a real event. Every day, suicide is prevented by therapists, counselors, friends, family, lovers. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal to that person who didn't die. And I'm going to sound like an asshole, but it's the truth. In the grand scheme of things, it's another person who made the choice to live, which is wonderful, which we all want. But is it really newsworthy? Is it Twitter worthy? I don't know. I don't think so. But that's how we're built. We're built in this way where we're going to positively reinforce like and share, this clickbaity kind of, let's call it operating system. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And then Meghan Markle, I guess is how you say her name, from the royal family says, many people have not asked if I'm okay. I have no clue what this means. Apparently, she wants more people to ask if she's okay because she's stressed out from living in the spotlight of being a celebrity. Okay. Why? Why is that news? Why is adding more celebrity to her suffering good for her? If I'm understanding correctly, if her struggle is, you know, I'm tired of the spotlight's making me stressed out, why in the holy hell are we writing more news about it? Would it not be more respectful to leave her the hell alone? Am I crazy? I mean, okay, how crazy am I is the better question, right? Why in the world do we matter? Why do we care? In the news, media, politics world, why does this matter? She's stressed out about being a new mother, and she's stressed out about whatever the hell it is that she's being, I don't know, whatever gossip is happening and whatever Twitter bullshit is happening to her. Why does it matter? It doesn't matter. Here's another great fear-mongering headline. Seismologists say that a major California fault shift is not unprecedented. So apparently there's some earthquake thing that's happened here in California. I didn't know. Something happened in Compton, and people are talking about it. The Garlock Fault. Everything on there is designed to just make you go, wow, what's going on? If you think about it, just with me, think about it with me for just a second. And any comments are welcome, and I'll get to the people who are commenting here in just a second because I don't want to go on forever. But think about it with me for a second. If you're a chimpanzee in the wild, or a bonobo, or an orangutan, or whatever, at what point do you think those creatures, those animals, those theoretically, let's call it more primitive than us creatures, should have the natural reaction of, wow, what is that? Maybe when they hear a loud noise, like the surprise response. Maybe when they hear an angry noise. Maybe when they hear some of their companions fighting. Maybe when they smell a predator. Maybe when they sense strange seismic kind of activity under their feet because there's a stampede of some sort, right? All those reasons, like life-threatening or social status-threatening reasons, seem like really good reasons to have the response. And yet here we are, quite literally all day long, staring at our freaking phones going, but what did they say? Did they like my tweet? How many people liked what? But how often does that happen in the wild? How often do you think chimpanzees, bonobos, and all of our other primate cousins are on the alert? I remember one time I don't remember what video it was because Jordan did so many videos, but Jordan Peterson did a video where he basically stated something to the effect of the natural way that humans are supposed to operate is something like a very low level sense of like threat detection and threat management. So we should be like ever so slightly either anxious and or fearful as we walk around all day, because we just don't quite know what we're getting into all day long. I think is basically what he said. And if I'm terribly bastardizing what he said, I apologize. It's not my intention to do so. That's the best of my recollection. And maybe I'm recalling it differently, so it kind of fits the narrative of my book. I'll admit that. But that's interesting to me, because I find that hard to believe. Like, if you were to ask Franz de Waal or Jane Goodall or other ethologists or evolutionary biologists like Brett Weinstein or Heather or Steve Stewart, whoever, any of the popular people who actually study creatures on an intensive basis, I bet that wouldn't be the case. I bet the first assertion out of their mouth would be something like, I don't know if they're constantly in a threat state, even if it's low level. Because, yeah, threat management's probably like the number one thing that we're accustomed to as humans. But do we have to constantly be in that state? Is Jordan really correct? I don't think so. You know, all due respect to him and whatever he's going through, and I hope his recovery is going well. I disagree with that point, because I don't think that matches up with the society we've created for ourselves with basically relative like success and ease, right? I don't think that fits. I think that fits a narrative that he'd like to, let's say, espouse. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. I think that we kind of have this compulsive attitude with regard to technology. We have this compulsive attitude with regard to politics and news. We have this compulsive attitude with regard to drugs, because I think we're so consistently fearful now because of these devices and these shifts in society since about 2015, or maybe even 2012, that we're so afraid that we're not getting the social status of millions of people who don't even know us, right? Because if you think about how we're really built, we're designed to make sure we maintain status among groups and intergroups that are in our immediate area. I can't imagine having to try and maintain social status as like some random psychologist guy in California to people over in Uganda, in Germany, in Sweden, in China, in Iraq, and Egypt, and other places. I just can't. I can't imagine having to play the international politics game when I know nothing about those cultures. I know nothing about what they consider status behavior, high status behavior. Like, I can't imagine. And I can't imagine any of our ancestors are trying to compete like with other cultures that they know nothing about. So I think now, recently, we have a more threat-oriented, threat management-oriented way of looking at the world, thanks to this technology and the way society has shifted. But I don't think, unlike what Jordan says, I don't think that we actually all day long would walk around like that, especially for the people who live in the flyover states here in the United States. I bet that there's a significant percentage of people who aren't looking at their Facebook and their Twitter and their Instagram all day long, who aren't constantly worried about what's happening. And I bet older generations don't worry all day long if what they said is liked or loved or shared or retweeted. I don't think they care. I think that that's probably more representative of how we're supposed to be than how we currently are acting on the coasts in the South. I have this suspicion. So I'd like to make a more specific hypothesis, as I've stated in my book, that because of the technology, and if you're engaging with it consistently, the news media and the greed and all this stuff, that our instincts towards threat management, feeling safe, disconnecting from fear-inducing stimuli, like, am I liked enough? Do people care about me? Did I say the wrong thing? Will I get fired for whatever I tweeted? Cancel culture, all that bullshit. I think now we're at this place where that's become a thing, but only for the people who participate in the systems, because I know plenty of people who don't participate. So I don't want to be a fearmonger myself. I just want to talk about how maybe if you're participating in these things, you might be causing a more fear-driven state. Like, I heard a quick little anecdote. I heard Brett Weinstein interview Douglas Murray today. I listened to it while I worked out. And Douglas, apparently in his new book, The Madness of Crowds, I think it is. I haven't read it, so I'm not going to shit talk it, because that's not fair or intellectually honest. But one of the statements he made specifically in the video with Brett was something to the effect of, it shouldn't be so hard to like talk about these things reasonably, is basically what he said. And I completely 100% disagree, Douglas. Of course it should be hard. Do you know why? Because we have, and this is something that both of them admitted to in the video. Of course, it has to be hard now because we've created new cultures, subcultures specifically, that want it to be hard to talk about these things. So it should be hard. We shouldn't be complaining as if it shouldn't be that way. If things are bad because we've created bad narratives and bad dynamics, then we can't say it shouldn't be that way. What we should be saying, in my opinion, is how do we switch it back to a more reasonable discourse pattern? That's what we should be saying. Not, it shouldn't be that way. Of course it should. You smoke cigarettes for 30 years. I shouldn't have lung cancer. Oh, really? So you did like the #1 thing that predicts lung cancer and I shouldn't have it? Okay. That's my point, is like we've made some intentional choices. We've intentionally kind of fucked ourselves. And here we are fighting stupidly and arguing stupidly on Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else, YouTube. Of course it should be this hard because that's how primitive we are. And it's kind of sad that Brett wouldn't even say something like that. Of course we're that primitive. That's one thing that bugs the hell out of me, out of the IDW people. Why is no one acknowledging how primitive we are? It just doesn't make any sense to me. They're not stupid. Hell, for two of them, at least, this is their field. How do you not acknowledge that? Is it the bias that we should feel better about ourselves? It's like an ego self-serving bias? Like, what is it? I don't get it. Anyways, so I've rambled a fair amount here. Let me see if I can take a look here at the comments. Does anyone have any questions? Those of you who are out there watching, if you want to tweet at me or if you want to comment here on the YouTube, I'll answer them. Let me check the tweets here for a sec while I look at the questions over there. Oh, good. None yet. Good. No questions here on Twitter. All right. So let's see who commented here. Bobby said, dude. Oh, yeah, it's bullshit. Hillary's a piece of shit. Either fuck them all. You're late. Cockroach is Hillary Clinton. That's funny. Bobby says, Tulsi seems pretty okay. Maybe she is. Bobby also says, Twitter is garbage. In some ways, it is garbage, for sure. It absolutely is. I hope Jack gets his shit together. And if he wants to talk about that specifically, I'll happily talk with him about that. Joshua Valencia says, that's psychology. And he says, I love Jordan. I don't know what your comment was regarding, with regard to that is psychology, but I'd love to talk with you about it if you want to chime back in if you're still watching. The Furious SJW, one of my Twitter interlocutors, says, I think you agree with Douglas. I think I partially agree with Douglas. I would say that, again, I haven't read his book, so I don't want to speak out of my ass. I don't agree that it should be easy. He said it shouldn't be so hard. That was what he was saying when he was talking to Brett. Watch his interview with Brett on the Dark Horse podcast. Go watch. Brett's smart and thoughtful, all that good shit. If you want to have a really good meta conversation, go listen to the IDW people. I don't think I agree with the idea that it should be so easy. I don't think I don't think it's possible for us to have an easy conversation if we've created social structures and incentives, social incentives to be incendiary and combative. It is much, much sexier to our instincts to be an Antifa kind of person, or a Fox News pugilist like Sean Hannity, or an angry Rachel Maddow. Like, these are our role models, or they've been our role models for about a decade for discourse. Politicians, news media personality, and celebrities, all of whom I wouldn't trust with a $5 bill, have said and done incendiary things for the sake of getting clicks and making money. If we're going to have this primitive, low-level way of operating, then I think it's kind of insane to say what Douglas said, when he was chatting with Brett Weinstein. It shouldn't be so hard. No, it certainly should. If we have these high-level expectations, but we've created a society that capitalizes on our lowest instincts, and we've created reinforcement systems that capitalize on our lowest instincts, I don't agree with Douglas. It should not be easy. In fact, it should be hard. Is that the exact quote? It shouldn't be that we have all these difficult narratives. They're unnecessary. I still disagree. My point still stands. We've created mechanisms. We have socially created mechanisms through law, through discourse standards, through reinforcements, financial and social reinforcement via likes, clicks, tweets, retweets of incendiary things. So these difficult, blunt force instrument narratives, you're good, you're bad, you're anti-trans, you're pro-trans, all these dichotomous thinking, very unsophisticated ways of looking at issues, ways of talking, have been so socially reinforced for maybe since 2012 and longer. Of course it should be this hard. He's right that they're unnecessary, but of course it should be that we have them. That's what I disagree with him about. It should be hard. It should be that we have them because we've created a society that values them. Bobby says, and Furious, if you're still watching, please retort because I want to have a back and forth here. Bobby Snickers says, Jack won't get his shit together. Of course he won't. There's too much of a social incentive for him to keep pandering as he does. I don't like trite sayings, but the whole get woke, go broke thing apparently just doesn't resonate with people. They don't seem to get it. There haven't been enough Gillettes yet, I guess. I don't know why. Pandering. Bobby says, I'm listening to Douglas's book and I suggest you read it. I'd love to, but I just don't have time right now. So the Furious is responding saying, I guess what I'd interpret Douglas is saying is that, let's see, this should be good. Always a great interlocutor. If you're on Twitter, go chat with the Furious. Great person to talk to, by the way. That was my Donald Trump impression. Great. Wonderful. The best. I don't even know. I couldn't do it. Just waiting for the response patiently. It's not Twitter. Don't get an instantaneous response. Just patiently waiting. Hope you all are having a good Saturday night or Sunday morning, depending upon what time zone you're in. Please get the fear problem. Mascotbooks.com, PatrickLockwoodHealing.com, Amazon.com. Preferably through my website so I look more popular. Whatever. Or Amazon. So the Furious SJW says, this is how the Furious is interpreting Douglas Murray. The narratives that you've identified are so unnecessary in these cases. We could talk about these topics more easily without them. Of course we could. But they've become necessary because we've created incentive structures. We've created, as I talked about in my book, we've created social incentive structures. Let me see if I can break this down a little more because maybe I'm not being perfectly clear. It's a little late and I'm a little tired. So I'm a little hyped from caffeine, but I'm internally exhausted. So we've created social structures, what I would call tribal structures, right? Edmund Burke's little platoons, excuse me. We've created little platoons, little tribal structures that socially reinforce, positively reinforce every time you make a bland, broad, pandering statement. I'm pro-trans, I'm anti-trans, whatever it is, right? So that social reinforcement is going to get to our primitive instincts more so than the nuanced perspective that doesn't automatically socially signal to a group. That's my argument, is that because we have created these automatically reinforcing ways of connecting like social media and whatnot, we have tricked our brain and our instincts particularly into going, oh my God, it's so important. I have access to all these people, right? And because we're very primitive creatures, even though Brett and Heather and all of them will never admit it, I don't think. Because we're primitive, we go, oh shit, because I have access to these people, I need to make sure that I'm on their good side. I need to make sure that they are somehow my allies. So if we screw up and we don't signal to our little platoon correctly, our tribe correctly, then we are screwed. And what's the joke of it all is that now that's coming true. It's coming to fruition that if you say the wrong thing, you could get fired. Fire me. I don't care. Come at me. The Furious SJW says, I see the should as applying outside those bland incentives. We shouldn't have them. You're interpreting the should inside the context of those incentives as a given. It is a given. It's a given by our instincts. If I'm reading you correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's a given because our instincts don't know how to not be that way. My argument is we're not sophisticated enough to actually manage these, let's say, tribalistic instinct hijacking systems. As I talked about in my book, social media is a tribalistic instinct hijacking system. Automatic connection equals automatic positive reinforcement or punishment. That's something that we desperately need as mammals. So it's automatically unnecessarily, I argue in the book, scary or unnecessarily awesome if someone retweets something. So if you, Furious, if you retweet something of mine, I will automatically feel good. Even though you don't know me really, and I don't know you really, I will automatically feel good because you are signaling my status to the outside world. You're sharing my opinion, good, bad, or otherwise. 60 years ago, we never would have met. We never would have known each other, basically. So we don't have any hardware for this new thing that capitalizes on a more primitive, blunt response system. I don't know if that made sense. Maybe I didn't answer your retort very well. You tell me. So you're saying, this is the Furious talking, so you're saying we can't not be so riled up about these issues, so these discussions will always be hard. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Thank you for paraphrasing. Yes. Because of the way these things capitalize on our instincts, I say literally hijack in the book, they can't not be hijacking. They can't not be hard discussions because we don't have the sophistication that Douglas and Brett think we have. If you remove this intermediate variable, right? In research, we have moderators and mediators and confounds. This would be either a mediator or a moderator. By no means should we have this for connecting with people hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. But we do, but we don't have good hardware for how to deal with this. We don't. I don't know anyone who would, if you disagree with that and you're a regular person, you're an academic, whatever it is, you let me know. I don't think we have good hardware for this. In fact, I don't even think we have good software in the brain for this, as Brett Weinstein would say. So because we don't have good hardware and good software for this, it's going to capitalize and hijack things in such a way that we, let's say, become a little bit more prey to how reinforcing it is. We will, let's say, trick ourselves into thinking it's more important than it is. One of the jokes that I have with a lot of my patients and my friends is, you know, if I just lost my phone, I'd be happy for a day. Because that's kind of where I'm at. There's like no part of me that really wants this anymore, but I guess I have to have it for my patients, for business, for whatever it is. But I don't want it. You know? But I need it for prestige, so I can tweet things on the go, right? That's the problem, is we've created this system that's automatically reinforcing. Now we can do things to gain prestige at all hours of the day. I can be making this video at 10:30 at night California time, to gain prestige or to help the world change or whatever it is, right? So I can act on my primitive instincts anytime I want. That's not, I don't know that it's necessarily useful for us, even though it's available. Is that really useful? I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. Well, this has been fun. I was thinking I was going to chat for like 20 minutes and be done. Here we are at 50 minutes. What do we do here? I feel like Bill Burr. All right, got to fill some time. Um, Anyone else have any questions? I feel like I've rambled for a fair amount here. Good back and forth with the Furious here. Thank you, Bobby, for commenting. Any other thoughts before I go? All questions are welcome. No question off limits. Sake Min says, why did you change to Saturday? I didn't. I'm not changing. I'm just had a random desire to go live. I had a couple of good conversations today with different people. One with Dr. David Lay, whom, if you're on social media, I highly recommend following him. Sharp guy, good guy. I feel like Donald Trump. He's great. Yeah, I've had a couple of good conversations that prompted me with some thoughts that I'd rather get out right now as opposed to tomorrow, because tomorrow I have a shit ton of things to do while they're fresh. And yeah, that's all. I'm not really here. I don't think I can do it consistently on a given day and time anymore. I don't think I have the, let's say, scheduling freedom to do that. So when I have time, I'm just going to do it. So I hope that answers the question. Any other questions? All questions are answerable, hopefully, and acceptable. Other questions? Please get the Fear Problem. Amazon, Mascot Books, PatrickLockwoodHealing.com. If you want to donate, that'd be great. I can get some more books for people. Trying to help kids learn how to read. For some reason, that's not a very sexy charity. I don't know. My Give a Book project was kind of a flash in the pan. It's a good one, though. Other questions? I'll give you all another minute. And if nothing else, I'll say goodbye. Mm-hmm. Well, it's been another minute. No one's chatted or chimed in. I appreciate you all for watching, commenting. Please like and share if you can, if you feel so compelled. Please help me spread science and reason. Common sense, which appears to be missing. Why, I don't know, but it just is. Please get the Fear Problem. Check me out on minds.com, minds.com. Check me out on Twitter at PsychPLockwood. On, Twitter, Minds, and here on YouTube. Have a good Sunday or rest of your Saturday night if you're still up. And I will talk to you all the next time the spirit moves me. See ya. Have a good one.